Thank you so much. Pleasure. Please do scan this code, in fact. So I've now got the pleasure of being a university professor, and they make us do these didactics teaching lectures. And they say the absolute worst thing to do if you want to communicate something is just do a full frontal presentation. So this should get you, I hope, I'm doing it as well because I'm winging it. I'm trying to use PowerPoint, of all things, with plugins. This should get you to a question that asks how you're feeling. And yeah, you're feeling all right. You can join these questions that I've got interspersed at my presentation here, always up in that corner there. Okay, my pointer, yeah. Corner there, QR code, and you can join. Why is the mood getting worse? What the hell? What the hell? All right, with that, welcome, and thank you, Side Effects, for bringing us all together one more time and again. And I'm not sure if the other presenters did that, but I think there's an applause in order for the whole Side Effects team, so thank you so much. This is a bit awkward because I've before I retreated to the hotel room and of course reworked some of the slides until the very last minute, I've watched some of the presentations. And this is kind of embarrassing and a bit frightening because in this presentation I won't bring you particularly beautiful or artsy visuals or inspiring stories from the trenches of large-scale productions. Instead I thought I'd bring you a talk about Houdini, about art and design, about math and about AI. And then it hit me. Well, I'm at OFF here. Not sure about that. I'm not making promises here. I'm not making promises, just my thought process, right? And then I thought, well, it's OFF, so most of you folks know about that, so why not cover this? I'm not sure what your opinion on AI currently is, but this talk is definitely have some Houdini in it, and I'm at this point, is this even a talk? So what the hell? So welcome to something Houdini AI stuff. And first off, this talk is about you. So tell me about AI and you. And again, we're winging it. Let's see if the network catches up. There you go. Okay, so for those who just came in, scan the QR code and you should be taken to an online survey tool where hopefully, if this network connection holds up, you can tell me how you think about AI. And it's not working. Great. Okay, well, I'll just add something here, and otherwise we'll skip this, and that's it for, there we go. There we go. That is real time, yeah. Yeah, that is, real time-ish. I guess it didn't take like 5 minutes to update this, but this is not fake. This is your actual reactions here. Okay, I was expecting kind of this distribution. I'm particularly relaxed about this. I think we're in this 7 stages, or how many stages of grief do we have? I think we're now we're leaving the depression phase. So that is kind of good, a good sign here. Also, I've got good news for you here. Okay, great. I think we're good here. So. The first one, being relaxed or fearful about AI. Here's a theory that might also be Mano's theory. We've got this U-curve. And of course, when you're ignorant about AI tech, bliss, no worries. And then you learn about AI and you get worried really, really quickly. And the more you learn, the more relaxed you get. Until you learn more and more and more and you get very worried. But about totally other things then, up here. I've got good and bad news depending on where you are on this curve. Because I think I'm in this zone here. And I want to take you to this Mo zone. So if you're here, perfect. We're going to get there. If you're here, I'll actually try and dumb you down, and I will succeed. All right, but to get this started, why do I do this? Why did I decide on building the project I built so far? And that harks back to a few weeks where I was meeting with Paul Ambrosius and a really talented developer, and this one other guy from Munich, Vincent Schwenk. And as it so happens, he's showing us one of his projects, and he used a bit of Gen AI in there. And as it also happens, Vincent cycled from Munich to Barcelona to be at OFF. And he's here, so I'd like to welcome him on stage and tell us a bit about that project.
Hello, hello, hi. So, hello everyone. I will make it very short, but I'm here for the visual part. And this was a funny coincidence that Moritz just did the stuff which I used for a project which just finished like a few weeks ago. And this was for the VJ show for Peggy Goo in Las Vegas at the Sphere. And the production timeline was so tough that I didn't have time to model things, and Peggy really loved animals, and I came to the conclusion that it would be really cool to do something with AI. And I just figured out that there's a super cool tool called Trippo AI, which I will show you in a second, but here again are some videos from the live show. And it was crazy how huge the sphere itself is. I've always seen these guys only like tiny on my screen, but in reality they were way bigger than I expected. Yeah, but let's make it short. So that's the interface of the website, and we prompted a lot of different of these cute inflated toys with Midjourney, load the image into Trippo, and that was the mesh. We exported the mesh and then added some more shading and details in wherever you want to render things, and this was just one example, and I did like really hundreds of these animals because the show was big. Here's another example, like you download whatever you want, you can even remesh the thing, and the remesher works very well. Then put it into your 3D program, do whatever you want with it, add some simulation, light, shading, and yeah, you are done with that workflow, and it really saved us so much time. Like, yeah, I wouldn't even be able to do that. And
this talk's not about you.
No, I'm already done, so cheers.
Thank you so much, Vince. Thanks so much. Lovely work. So before we dive into what this all triggered and how we rebuild that stuff using Houdini tools, just for, I mean, most of you know me at this point. The new thing here is I'm a professor now, which I find super exciting, but I'm more excited about being a PhD candidate now. And I do, thank you, I do Gen AI, Gen Design, mainly nowadays using Houdini and Python. And this is kind of my origin story, ancient times at a Munich-based studio, Ike Sponsor, who presented here as well. Been doing motion design, VFX stuff, and that was right the area like 10 years ago-ish, where you had all these shoe commercials that kind of merged motion design with VFX for the first time. And that's how I got started to be hooked on Houdini, because it was the VFX tool of choice. Then, together with one of the founders of the studio, Manuel Casasola, we started Entagma, which apparently most of you know, learning tutorial, learning page for mainly generative design, with mainly Houdini. And now we nowadays also are 4 people. We also have Chris and Antea, which we're super happy to have. And then a few semesters ago, because now my timelines go in semesters rather than years, months, or weeks, this happened. I became a professor for computational design at Nuremberg University of Applied Sciences in Nuremberg, southern Germany. And down here you see kind of the images of the stuff that I was doing or researching back then. This is like 2.5-ish years ago, which still translate to what I'm doing today. So these are images generated by not text prompts. So my theory is that there's so much visual, exciting stuff hidden in neural nets in AI tools that are hard to reach by limiting yourself to human language. So I try and research all kinds of different ways to getting to these things. And again, the latest thing that is now, and this is my life now, so that's why I need to bring in Vince for the beautiful stuff. My life now is building wonky render and calculation setups and hanging out at very well climatized rooms with big computers and with brilliant people, some of which are here today. The folks down there on the right side are the team of the science visualization at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, and I'm researching with them. And just to give you an idea what I'm doing, or what we're doing there, is actually we're trying to visualize what a neural net has learned. And these are concepts that come out of clip embeddings. Clip embeddings are the first step. When you enter text into a text-to-image model, it converts it into a high-dimensional space, which we here mapped into 3 dimensions. And you can see this is the weed cloud, the cannabis cloud, and it kind of clusters individual concepts and tries to organize them. And this is a small data set of, I think, 1 to 5 million points, but we are trying to generate bigger data sets to kind of get an idea of what the overall world idea of an AI is that it has learned. Here you can see, I think, libraries, librarians. So, my attempt to research is basically this. Knowledge gain and experimentation. And I think this guy is only partially right, because I think it's not a linear correlation, I think it's this. This is what I experienced in everything so far. At the beginning it's super difficult, then you make leaps, and then at the end, at the very top, it gets difficult again. So I'm trying to take you through I don't know which stage you're currently in, but I try to at least push you 1 pixel further, and hopefully you'll advance. Usual disclaimer, opinion's my own. What worked for me might not work for you. I'm a rambling old middle-aged white man. All sorts of privileges, all sorts of niche stuff, you know. Okay, please load, because I don't have notes. I don't know what the survey here was. All right, Gen AI usage, yeah, exactly, because now we're starting to get in the weeds. How and are you using generative AI personally? Again, let's see. And for folks who have joined, QR code will take you to the Mentimeter page where you will be able to join that survey. It just takes, oh yeah, okay, there, now we're loading. Great. Okay. So most of you use AI. Fewer, however, 3D content generators. Just yell at me. Which AI tools do you use? Or just show of hands. Image generators? LLMs? That means ChatGPT and everything. What else is there? Video generators. Okay. Okay. Right. Then which of those are you using? Let's start this damn thing. God damn it. Bless you. There you go. Again, just join using the QR code, and you can reorder them into whichever order is right for you. I think you can also just put in one. Okay, unsurprisingly. Disclaimer, and I think that's why GPT-4o is taking the lead here. That is the bad design of my slides. I meant image generators. So, I mean, GPT-4o can do images now, and I'm surprised how quickly it's taken the stage, looking at my students, but I might have phrased it differently. I'm quite happy that ComfUI is ranking so high here. That is usually not the case. What is others? The guys who clicked others, what is others? Crea? Anything else? Chloe? All right, good. Let's go into one of the few. You could qualify this as math slide. It isn't. It's just a bad pun. A totally vibes-based approach to building all this in Houdini. So basically, I want to take you through this, and I want to take you through this not necessarily because I want you to rebuild it. I will publish the stuff, and you can rebuild it with me. This presentation is not that. It's about approaches, how to solving problems, and just the daily stuff that it is currently dealing with AI from a tech standpoint if you want to integrate it. So this is my goal for today, building a mesh generator that does weird and wicked consoles. So basically, the bright backgrounds are always the input image, the dark backgrounds are the 3D geometry. Just a quick one. I mean, that's more of a joke because, I mean, okay, let's see. Let's see, maybe there are a few people in here who enjoy that, but if so, I might get out here. This takes a while, but basically my idea here was, or the thing is, all of these stuff here, okay, yeah, maybe working on variants is also the stuff that I most enjoy out of this. I don't enjoy any out of this particularly. Yeah, texture reprojection, UV mapping. Yeah, I think we're on the same page here, roughly. Cool. Okay, now, the plan for today is, basically, what I want to build with you is, I want to go from a prompt to a textured mesh. And there's in-between steps here. Those in-between steps are, on one hand, a necessity of the underlying tech. On the other hand, they are also a chance for us to manipulate whatever we're generating. So yes, prompt engineering, we've been there. You can manipulate an image, but you can also now manipulate meshes before you send them off to texturing. God damn it. Someone, I think that might be me, they know how to manipulate images. You don't have to answer this. I'm assuming that all of you know how to manipulate images. So that's the easy part. And basically, what you can do is you can use any image that is a square format in this what we're building here. Typically, again, I wanted to rely on AI, so I'm doing text to image. In this case, I'm using a model from Civitai. Who knows Civitai? Oh, okay, wow. So Civitai is wonderful and really frightening at the same point. It's a giant open source community of fine-tuned models that you can download for image generators. If you go on there, you will find that lots of these images have this images hidden due to mature content. It kind of hints where some of this part of the community is working, or what some of the part of this community is working on. However, leaving that aside and ignoring that part for now, they have really great tech and really great fine-tuned models that are also non-pornographic. And that's what we're using here. We're using a somewhat lightweight model that is still able to generate photoreal stuff. It is based on Stable Diffusion XL, quite an ancient model by now, I think 2 years. I would have lost something else, I will get to why I didn't. Then we use image to mesh. Some of you have heard some of these names: Trellis, Hunyuan, High 3D Gen. Raise your hand. Okay, cool. Anyone used any of those? Okay, that's great. So some of those are image generators. For example, Vince, you use Tripo, I think. They are the underlying tech of that. And today I'm going to be using High 3D Gen, which is really new tech. So that's been published on March 31st. So it's, I think, 8 weeks old by now. And I'm using that because when I prepared these slides a week ago, that was the best tech. Now it's not anymore. Now Hunyuan published a new model, and apparently that is competitive to that. However, the Hunyuan model is only available in their website, and I want to run this locally on your machine. A, to be able to keep the data in-house. B, to not accumulate compute cost. And C, to be able to modify and mingle with everything. So, and this paper, so I'm just going to briefly take you through what it is, what I'm doing on a daily basis. So I'm researching this paper, this pops up. High 3D Gen, high fidelity 3D geometry generation from images via normal bridging. Normal what? So, basically, you're going through a paper, and any one of you using Notebook LM, free tool by Google, raise your hand. If you want to understand this shit, use Notebook LM. It's a free tool, you upload a PDF, and it has the silliest thing, which I never thought was valuable, which is generating a podcast out of a paper, where you have a male and a female voice talking for 10 minutes about the paper, including ums, and hey, that's amazing, and it works. You understand that stuff. The important part in this diagram, which hides on page whatever, is not this. This is, by standard, pretty normal nowadays. We can estimate normals out of a single image. We can do that. It's just a given at this point. The new stuff is this. What they are doing is they are compressing normal information and trying to generate a 3D image out of it. That is, I'm sorry, Bill, I have to go over there. That is this part here. This denoised latent is the compressed information. So they are trying to generate 3D out of this. The new part actually is, and I cannot show this, is the stuff up there where they're doing the camera stuff. What they do is, out of these latents, they regenerate a 3D image and compare that to a ground truth, to the original, what they want to reconstruct. And that is rarely done in training. Typically, you do that all in the compressed space because it's easier, computationally wise. What they are doing is, again, they are rendering out images and comparing this with the GT is ground truth, that means that is what you want. So they are comparing these views, the rendered views, the synthesized views, with the original views. And they are just penalizing if they are too far apart. And that is a new thing. That is a new thing. And this is what comes out of it, especially when you compare it. Again, apparently Hunyuan published an update, I think this or last week, and has now equal or better quality. Be a bit weary of these images and papers. I'm not accusing them of cherry picking, but these models typically are trained on data sets like this, so they are expected to work well on data sets like this. And if we look at the Game Boys, we will see that they might not hold up. All right, what was this? Oh yeah, I mean, you know how to do UV mapping and texturing. Well, let's skip it, it doesn't load. But basically, oh, there you go. Brilliant. The 3 people that participated know some of it. Yeah, I'm fully expecting to get it. No, it's getting up. I thought we were more operating here. At least I'm very much here, I think. Okay, so basically, when it comes to UV mapping and texturing, it's basically this. How to wrap that Lindt chocolate bunny into a foil so the eyes are in the right place and the snout is on the right place and everything, right? And for that, we're using MV Adapter. MV Adapter is another paper, I won't go into the details. It takes lots of conditionings. You will find the word conditioning a lot in Gen AI papers. Conditioning means some input with which we control the AI. In your typical ChatGPT, your text prompt is your conditioning. In this case, your conditioning is an input image from one view and an input mesh, the mesh you want to texture. And what this thing does internally, it generates up to 40 different views. In our case, we only use 6. and then reprojects it back onto the original mesh. And the really nice thing is it can work with any 3D or with any image generative model that has been out there when this was published, I think end of last year. So basically you opened yourself to the extremely weird and sometimes wonderful world of Civitai models. So if you want to go into one certain style, you can modify this and apply it. Tools of the trade are, of course, Houdini. I'm going to be using that as my hub. That is my 3D and generative tool of choice. And then, who knows diffusers? Show of hands. Few, okay. Gradio, okay. And Fast API, okay. Only the developer from the supercomputing center at this point. Quickly, Houdini, 3D program, yeah? We're on the page there? Okay, good. Some of them. 3D program. You chain nodes together, get a 3D model or modified. Diffusers, library. That means in programming, you typically don't spend your time writing a whole code from scratch. You want someone who's typically better and better paid than you to write the stuff, and you can only use it. Diffusers is for image generation. Gradio is a user interface for that, so you can make funny web interfaces. The demos that you most likely see, they have orange buttons, that's that stuff. And Fast API is a tool which we will use to kind of remote control this. So the pain here is real. Oh, please, just load. There you go. If you happen to be working on 3D, and if you happen to be running your own workstation, and if you have a GPU, just tell me how much RAM that GPU does have. And again, let's wait for that. Oh, come on, seriously? Now you're bragging. Seriously? Okay, thank you. Okay, there's more normal people in this room as well. Jesus Christ, literally everyone 24 or above. Okay, the issue we're running here, what I'm hinting here with this is we are running 3 models: text to image, image to mesh, and texturing. Out of which text to image is the most compact. Depending on what model you have, you get it into 8, sometimes even 4 gigabytes of VRAM. But the newer models like Flux, easily 23 gigabytes. So you're right at the edge of your 4090 that you so dearly bought. Image to mesh, just 23 gigabytes straight out, and the same thing. This is the bad news, right? So what we're doing? Well, what we could do is we could sequentially load all these models. Assume we are like apparently most of this room and have a really expensive graphics card, and we are fine with just using 23 gigabytes. We load the first model, loading a model on a GPU, depending what model you use, 1 minute to 3. Then unload it after you generate an image, load the next model, again, 1 minute to 3. Generate your mesh, unload it, again, load the next model, 1 minute to 3, texturing. You don't want to be loading and unloading every time. So what do? You try to build something like this, a networked architecture, where Houdini is controlling these individual pieces, right? And in my case, again, this is all university hardware. I've got a workstation with 2 graphic cards, the 4070, so 16 gigabytes, and one with 24 gigabytes. And what I'm doing here, localhost indicates that's my local machine. I'm running 2 APIs. An API is kind of a wrapper that turns whatever code you write into a zombie that you control remotely with a single call, with a single line of code. And in here, I'm wrapping my text-to-image generator, and in here, I'm wrapping my image-to-mesh generator. Okay, what's this? That's my colleague's machine, and hopefully she's not working today. The funny thing about these remote controlling zombie AI API things is you can also run them on a network. So if you have access to the machine on the network, you can remote control it, and that's what I'm doing. So let's go into that. Yeah, I've got code screenshots in here. I'll try to go through them quickly. The first thing we're doing is text to image. The good. That's easy. Basically, you go to the diffusers library page, and you have your example. That is literally all code you need to write to generate an image of, in this case, a photo of an astronaut riding a horse on Mars. The only thing you need to do is attach that remote control API to it. Or let ChatGPT do it. Spits out around 30 lines of code. That's literally all the code. You run it in your environment, you call it from Houdini, you're done. Still all right, image to mesh. Yes, a bit more cumbersome to install, yes, but again, fast API prompt in ChatGPT, and the thing is running. The downright ugly is mesh to texture mesh. Again, this MV adapter thing that generates the different views of our thing. So I spent 1 full day trying to get this set up on any machine I could find. It did not work. And either you could just keep on banging your head, or you could do something different. In this case, going to Hugging Face. That's the page that I meant. They have demos for all these new papers. And this orange button here is your typical hint that there's Gradio. This is the archetypical layout of a Gradio app. A demo app where they managed to set up their server so it runs. Hint, up there's a slot saying run locally. What that does is it gives you an even weirder command to virtualize this thing. So we're doing layers of abstraction, and I heard you like layers of abstraction at this point. So let's add some layers of abstraction and run this in a virtual machine, which I won't talk you through. My dear friend Paul Ambrosiuson did a great tutorial, which you can find at this link here, Bismuth AI, and he did virtualization. Virtualization means you're running a computer that is being emulated on your real computer, and it brings all the stuff with it that you need to run a very complex and very optimized piece of code. The tag for that is called Docker, and with a rather lengthy command, you get that stuff to run. Okay, now I got the Gradio app running. Again, clicking stuff, clicking buttons. I don't want to click buttons, I want to send a remote command. So let's just modify the demo app. And I would love to I would love this to load. So basically, show of hands. Can LLM pull this off? Just add an API to this Gradio. Who thinks it can pull it off? Who thinks it's smooth sailing? No one? Okay. Who thinks it's a bit of bug fixing? Raise of hands. Who thinks it's a ton of bug fixing? Who thinks it's a fucking nightmare? You're right. It's a fucking nightmare. Yeah, LLM definitely won't do this. It took me half a day of bug fixing really shitty vibe code. So vibe coding does not only work for me. Okay, finally we're done in Houdini time. And we're calling some APIs. Last screenshot of code, and then we're finally into visuals. This is all I wanted. This single line tells my computer to generate, no matter where this computer is. So what we're generating here, first node triggers a prompt, isometric view of an old Game Boy 3D illustration. With all these generators, you're getting way better results when you're prompting for an isometric input image. So basically 45-degree angle, not too distorted. And also, it's kind of trained on this 3D illustration style. So that spits out whatever this wacky neural net thinks is a Game Boy. Really easy. The next thing, again, single line of code triggers the generation of the mesh. We can already see getting a bit wonky here and there. That's where you might want to tweak your model or model parameters. And then you're triggering the texturing. And again, the texturing, in this case, I went for the cheapest model they had because it was quick. And I was honestly fed up after implementing that stuff. Yeah, not the greatest quality. But again, now you've got this running, you can adjust and you can mingle with it. It's returning UVs. They look like this. I'm not sure if you've seen UVs looking like this. They are shit. This is Paul Ambrosiuson's 3-node recipe in Houdini to turn really shit UVs into slightly less shit UVs. I said slightly less shit UV. Okay, they're not great, but they're not as bad as this. And then you have to reproject the thing. Again, now you change the whole layout of the thing. You need to just put the texture back where it was. And after that, that's your texture coming out there, and you can add more detail by just generating a really cheap bump map by subtracting 2 blurred versions of that image, which gets to these barely visible lines here, but which provide enough tiny detail in a bump map to get this thing into rendering, into Carmine Solaris. And in here, all you need to do is add the material in here, and make sure you have the material image loaded that you just generated, pipe it into bump, and you're golden. And now you can render that stuff. This is a somewhat sped up version of that thing. So I'm prompting here for an isometric view of a classic handheld Sega gaming console. Pay attention to, I think, this area. This is sped up twice, and now we have Sega here, with pretty much everything remaining the same. And now we're piping this into the mesh generation. This is real time. The mesh generation is astoundingly fast. And you load this there, and make sure it displays the right lighting mode. There you go. Again, higher settings, longer render time, but maybe better mesh. And then this is not running on my machine, so I'm only showing you the network view, because otherwise there's nothing to see. Again, this is shitty experimental code. But now what he did on the machine of my colleague, again, this is sped up 4 times the generation for the mesh, and the reprojection was sped up 10 times. The reprojection is actually the slowest part of this. And you get this textured mesh. And then you pipe in the texture into your COP network. That's your texture. You generate a bump map out of it. What's the value in this? Well, clearly not extremely high visual quality. However, it's quick iterations, and it's quick and quirky mockups. I'm a sucker for AI weirdness, and I would love if AI would be as weird as it was in the beginning. So you can actually trigger it to do odd stuff, because that is clearly not a valid Game Boy. That is clearly some stuff off Gamey Baboy. I love that stuff, Gamey Baboy. But also, and that's kind of why I'm preaching here, and that's also kind of what really is rewarding as a professor. It is my opinion that the earlier you understand tech on a more fundamental level, the earlier you're able to bend it to your needs and to be actually creative with it. Do not wait for the amplification of this. That's what we've seen, and I think that's some of the reason why generative AI got such a bad rep in the beginning, because we've seen the amplification with, back then, Midjourney, which had one extremely distinctive look, and which was extremely derivative in its creativity. And I think the more you're able to bend this stuff, the more you're able to create general, true, original creativity. And the intriguing stuff, especially in design, happens at the fringes, not necessarily at the mainstream that's been there forever. Yeah, you want to bring it there, but the most interesting stuff happens at the fringes. And this stuff is still very much fringy, especially when it comes to 3D generation. Well, why does it look as shitty as it does? Well, deliberate, yes, on one hand, but also the limitations of the model, mainly SDXL, and I could switch that out. Again, at some point I'd have to stop, but so this is like it looks, but you could switch out individual models to higher quality models. And they're already available, especially in MB adapter. With abstract stuff, it does generate abstract stuff. If it makes sense, I don't know, but I find it funny. And again, to drive this home, I think AI currently is good at everyday things. AI is capable of derivative work, but it's not great at original creativity yet. And I think that's where we can really use and abuse it as a tool. Again, same thing, advanced knowledge unlocks new tools. And speaking of tools of the trade, here are a few of the AI tools I use in my daily research. I explicitly want to point out Notebook LM, which it sounds silly. Generating a podcast out of some content you upload sounds extremely silly, but it's extremely quick way to digest information while you're on the go, while you're on the train. When I'm researching and collecting papers, Google, Perplexity, ChatGPT, you might know. Zotero is, I think, really esoteric in the research community. You store your papers there, you can generate quotes out of it. And implementing basically the same tools and Python and Jupyter Labs. A few more things. One second to last thing is, if you're still not fed up about this and maybe want to pursue a master's degree, you can currently apply at Nuremberg Tech. So you've got Manu and me as your professors, amongst a bunch of other really talented individuals. English-speaking master's degree, 4 semesters, international crew, and you have until end of May to apply. So I would massively encourage you. Finally, most important question. That's why I'm doing this talk, and we'll just wait for this to load, because that is important and dear to my heart. It's about Entagma AI content, because when you're running an online platform, you're getting lots of feedback, and not everything is positive or polite. And we haven't seen as angry emails as with the topic of AI. That's why we are hesitant, or I was, or still am hesitant to publish this stuff. I've got lots of stuff to publish, but it's purely Gen AI. And again, it goes to the direction of that, so using and abusing it, not just going to Midjourney. I would love to get your insight on that. And I will just leave that open. I've got a thank you slide, but I'll leave that open and you can vote, and thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Any questions from Moritz? Thoughts, opinions, disagreements, hopes, dreams, aspirations?
Debate me, I'm fine.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a simple question. What do you think people hate AI?
Why do I think people hate AI? There's different dynamics at play, in my opinion. And again, so the question, very personal opinion. The first things we've seen on AI were extremely derivative. So like even the prompts were like Greg Rutkowski ArtStation, right? That was one of the standard prompts when the whole Stable Diffusion thing started to blow up, like 4K ArtStation rendering Greg Rutkowski of something, something, something. So extremely derivative. And I think when you are working on the original works that are behind this, when you're a matte painter or a concept artist, and see your work being produced in a derivative manner, you can get the feeling that it's been stolen. The other side, and absolutely willing to debate this, is how originally creative is your work when it's been so easily stolen? And how originally creative is work that you find on ArtStation? We have a debate with our first semester students regularly where we do ArtStation roulette with them. And typically we are able to categorize any work that is on ArtStation into 3 to 5 categories. One is like the portal one, where you have a knight in shiny armor in front going to this mountain portal and you know exactly where the dude's going. You have sci-fi helmet, that also extends to sci-fi weapons, sci-fi anything. You have scantily clad person with armor, and you have frogs with wings. That is being overly simplified, right? And I don't want to diminish the quality of the work that these people do. It's amazing craft they have, but I understand why there's a certain amount of anger, of pain there. And again, it's with every technology. At the beginning, they will come for the easily automatizable, for the easily reproducible. And weirdly enough, it turned out that this was easily reproducible. So I think, A, you are worried because you're losing client money, but also you are losing self-worth. Because at least when I was still working in design, lots of the self-worth came out of the quality of the work you're doing. And when suddenly a machine and an idiot dude with a prompt, Greg Rutkowski, ArtStation, Entagma, Moritz Schwind, and blah, 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 can crank out your work, that hurts you on a personal level. I think there's lots of that dynamic going on. But again, personal opinion. And please, if you have other opinions, by all means share them. It's just gut feeling. There's one up there.
We'll start here and then go over there.
Hey. Thank you very much for the super interesting talk. I think while I can see that the tools you showed are very, very useful and very handy, I'm not sure it makes me less worried because I feel that maybe I'm even more replaceable than I was before, you know. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. If you want, would you share what your current job is, or what makes you worried about this? Which aspect of this makes you worried?
Yeah, well, I just have this fear that my task will boil down to some, you know, less. I like the handcraft kind of work that is involved in doing 3D. I love to nerd down in the things, and I feel like I'm going to be afraid there's going to be some prompting work that I won't find as. It won't give me the same satisfaction out of feeling like I have hand-credited this stuff if I feel like the computer has done most of the small creative decisions for me along the way. So I'm not so afraid that I'm getting it replaced. I'm more getting afraid that my future job is not going to be as interesting or as satisfying to me as it was before.
Okay, I mean, I cannot speak to personal interest. I personally am very quickly bored with things, so that might be why this speaks to me. I would encourage seeing this past the prompting way. And again, maybe I did a bad example here because I started with prompts. But that harks back to the other research kind of stuff that I'm doing, that exploring what hides in these neural networks that is not reachable with human language. And there's a lot of creative exploration and also tech exploration involved here. And I think the computer graphics community is uniquely positioned to take advantage of this. Yes, while I mean, I have no silver lining for you if you say that, for example, remeshing or retexturing is what gives you pleasure. That might be automatized away, yes. But I think there might be hope that you find something maybe as fulfilling when you dive away from the archetypical, appified usage of that stuff. At least I hope. Yeah.
Well, I certainly don't love unwrapping or remeshing, but
I'm sorry. I didn't want to imply. I'm sorry.
I hope it will take away those tasks and leave the funny stuff for me. But that's my hope, at least. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.
Can I cut through here? On my way through, I'm just going to say that, in my opinion, there will be two pipelines in the future. One will be cheap and easy content creation through prompt or just computers making content on their own and make me a movie that looks like Top Gun with Tom Cruise in it, a variation on that. However, there'll be another pipeline that is much more crafted using the technologies, but putting power in the hands of the artist and keeping it there. So,
Hi, thank you for this amazing talk. I was wondering, you mentioned the limitations of the models from Civitai or also the models and the data that it's trained on. And I was wondering how you feel about training your own small models or LoRa's.
Thank you for the question. I didn't go into that. I can do a bit of, let me see if I can find it. I can do a bit of PowerPoint bingo here. Let's try that. So let's see where we had let's try this one. I think that was last off, where I spoke a bit about the data that goes into the models. Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, there we go. If you don't mind, you tell me when I'm absolutely running out of time. Again, last year's off presentation. So with every model, you are extremely biasing, and sometimes deliberately and sometimes not deliberately. The issue, for example, is with a data set that underpinned most of the original generative networks, which is called Lion, which is, I think, 5 billion images tagged from the internet, and with an aesthetic rating. That means how aesthetic is an image. And that is based on a few human input aesthetic scores, and then extrapolated from there for the rest of the data set. And within this data set and exploring this data set, my point back then was men are ugly, and the data set proves it. So if you go through the data set explorer and go through the data set and search for woman, and over here you have the aesthetic score. This is 0, and that's typically what you see. So just placeholder images that they scraped, and of course this is not an aesthetic concept of a woman or anything that's in there. But now you increase the aesthetic rating, and here we're at 3 out of 9. And we've already seen very white, very young, very symmetrical, very perfect, whatever you want to describe perfect, very conventional images. And it gets worse when you crank it up to 9, you're here in the doll territory, which is kind of frightening. The same thing, men are ugly. Well, if you do the same thing for men, of course, at 0 you get the same placeholders, that's easy. 3, and remember, 3 was already in model territory. In men, you still are in the kind of placeholder territory, and you see white dudes mainly in their 30s and 40s wearing business suits. You crank it up a bit to 7, you now see an occasional hipster, but also not very diverse. And what happens when you crank this up to 9? What's the most attractive, what's the most aesthetic concept of a man that people could think of? Moritz. Thank you. Gingerbread men. I have a theory about this. I have a theory that the original data from the people scoring this aesthetically were predominantly heterosexual cis males, which might have an issue with admitting that they find another man highly aesthetic. And that just bleeds into the data, but that's just my personal gut feeling. So yeah, and this limitation underpins all of the base data sets that are out there, and even if you fine-tune more. So you were mentioning the fine-tuned models on Civitai. Yes, they are trained on limited data. Sometimes deliberately, because you want to get into a certain aesthetic, sometimes not knowingly, and you introduce bias. What was the other part of the question? Sorry, I got rambling.
How you feel about training your own LoRa's or small-scale models?
Okay, so for those who don't know what a LoRa is kind of an attachment to one of these base models that modifies it to add concepts, to add style, to add content. That's lack of better words. I feel good about that. I like that. So there's I've used Koya SS, but I haven't done it in a while. I'm not sure that's still the most up-to-date version of training it. I think that's a really good good way of fine-tuning your model to a certain style, maybe to your own artistic style. Yes, and it's also rather quickish, so in the minutes to hours typically instead of weeks or months. Was there another part? Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you answered it perfectly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say I find that gingerbread man very attractive.
See, it's you and the data, right?
Thanks very much, Moritz. Great presentation.
Thank you.